Dems Are Groomers. That's right, Dems Are Groomers. And the Daily Biden Dumpster Fire. This is Mark Fisher with Mark and the Millennials and the Millennial. Joining me today is, of course, Christopher Hopkins, our producer on the other side of the camera. Welcome, everyone. This podcast is titled Dems Are Groomers. And yes, we do have a great Daily Biden Dumpster Fire. But first up, toddlers tranny. Or tranny toddlers. You decide. It's true stuff. Get this. In the Daily Caller, 50 school districts are granted $10,000 each by It Gets Better Project, that's the name of the project, to promote gender ideology in schools. An LGBT organization awarded 50 school districts nationwide a $10,000 grant each to promote gender ideology and support Gender Sexuality Alliance, GSA clubs, which I've never heard of that before, GSA clubs. According to a press release from the, quote, It Gets Better Project, which is the name of the organization that is giving the grants. The It Gets Better Project provided grants to 50 schools nationwide that submitted project proposals. According to the group's press release, the organization said the grants were created via customer donations from American Eagle customers during Pride Month 2021. So isn't American Eagle, Chris, a store that sells clothing? It's a clothing store, right? Mm-hmm. So I guess they asked you if you wanted to plus up on your purchase and donate, $1 or $2 or whatever to this particular project during Pride Month. But I think that how many people were duped into giving money thinking that they were giving it for Pride Month as opposed to public schools. But that's what the money's going to be going for. Examples of the projects. You ready for this? So you're a school, you get $10,000 if you applied for the grant. Here are some examples of the projects that you could use the money for. Creating gender-affirming closet at school to help trans students access clothing that fits their true selves. So in other words, in a public school, you're going to create a clothing closet where kids can go in and dress in the clothing that they want to dress in at school, unbeknownst to mom and dad. And the funding will also go to remodeling of single-gender lavatories to gender-neutral bathrooms. I'm just curious, what actually happens when you go into a single-gender lavatory? Why does it need to be single? What ends up happening in there that's so unique that the person can't go into the bathroom of their gender that was assigned to them at birth, otherwise known as their biological gender? It can also be gender-neutral bathrooms that can be built out as well. Parents Defending Education, a concerned parent organization, highlighted several examples of schools, some in traditionally conservative areas, that spent the money on creating LGBT murals or videos on pronouns using the funds. Videos on pronouns. Indiana-based Carmel High School plans to create a community-wide pride events, according to the It Gets Better Project's announcement. Carmel High School operates a GSA club, according to documents obtained by PDE, which is sponsoring a fundraiser on GoFundMe to help a transgender student run away from home. Now imagine your GoFundMe and someone sets up an account. And the account that they set up on GoFundMe is help little Johnny run away from home. Isn't that supposed to be illegal? But isn't the GoFundMe the same organization that stopped people from raising funds to help the gentleman who was out in the Midwest, who Kyle, what's his face? He was the guy that shot people in the Rittenhouse. Yeah. Kyle Rittenhouse, yeah.
And I think with the Canadian truckers.
With the Canadian truckers, right. Yeah. GoFundMe shut that down because, God forbid, the Canadian truckers can't have a GoFundMe account, and you can't create a GoFundMe account for Kyle Rittenhouse, who was defending himself. Oh, no, you can't defend yourself against the government. But you can, ladies and gentlemen, put together a GoFundMe account as long as it helps a transgender student run away from home. Quote, hello, we are the CHS Gender Sexuality Alliance, and we are fundraising on behalf of a Carmel High School student who needs to raise money to get out of an abusive household, the GoFundMe reads. He cannot fundraise for himself because it might cause his mom to try to raise money himself. What does that say? He cannot fundraise for himself because if his mom caught him trying to raise this money himself, his situation would get exponentially worse. Okay. And so here's the thing. If you GoFundMe, it's illegal to be raising money, obviously, to help someone who's a minor run away from home. I mean, what could possibly go wrong there with all of this going public? Because it's a public raise of money. So all these people see this. So you're going to have groomers and predators, of course, all about this, putting the money in it, right? No doubt.
And they don't even know who it's going towards?
Right.
How do we know this isn't just some person saying all this?
It's a scam, probably. It could be. Yeah, good point. Could be a scam. LGBTQ groups, commonly referred to parents who refuse to affirm a child's transgender identity as abusive, according to countless forums, articles, and reports. Yeah, so if you're a mom and a dad, and you refuse to say to little Johnny, who's in 5th grade, that he is actually a girl, then you are being abusive. Right. Maine-based Cape Elizabeth High School received $10,000 to create a film that will educate teachers and students how to be more inclusive and use proper pronouns, according to a press release from the school. Student Saga Hart, a rising junior, is tasked with creating the video. Louisiana-based Haynes Academy similarly vowed to create and fund an LGBTQ plus inclusive training for students and faculty using the grant funds. Grand Island Senior High School in Nebraska vowed to create a mural to represent all identities in the LGBT community. The same school district admits on its website to using controversial surveys that often ask about students' gender and sexual experiences. Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, these are minors, okay? We're talking about grant monies going to schools that are applying for the grant monies that are supposed to be educating minors, right? Not adults, which is why we're calling this podcast Dems Are Groomers, because literally this is grooming. Grand Island Senior High School in Nebraska vowed to create a mural. I think I read that already. IDEA North Mission College Prep in Texas, which is still a high school, by the way, created one of the most ambitious proposals highlighted in Today. LGBT students at the school plan to create a region-wide conference for queer youth. Did you ever think in a million years that the public school system responsible for educating minors would bring this on as one of their functions to educate? Would you really, really think that this is their function? Of course it's not. The school is looking to create a region-wide queer youth conference where queer youth across South Texas can come together. The It Gets Better project states, the primary objective is to make schools safer and more inclusive. This will be tailored to the queer youth that are spread throughout their high schools. IDEA Public Schools told the Daily Caller that the award was given entirely to an after-school student organization named Warrior Prism Alliance. I'm not even sure what that means. The after-school student organization, Warrior Prism Alliance, hopes to use the grant to host a conference for the general public. So, okay. You've heard me read a lot of this. This article just goes on and on and on. And it's talking about one school after another who's received $10,000 from this organization, okay? And this organization is called the It Gets Better Project, so that schools can create gender sexuality alliances and other kinds of programs. But the problem is the schools are teaching minors these things. And I know that many of you are going to say, oh, well, these are high school students. They certainly already know what they are and who they are. No, folks. That's not the function of the public school system. Okay? It's not what they're supposed to be doing. Just not the purpose. Yet, increasingly, not only these things being pushed into the public school system, but in lower and lower and lower grades. And so you have to ask yourself, who are these groomers who are doing this? Well, they're Democrats. The Democrats are the groomers. Of course they are. They're sick. It is a sick political party. It is a political party that clearly has mental illness widespread within it to think that this is okay. In my own public school system, by the way, and our own Board of Education in the county that I live in, which is a Republican county, the school board was taken over by a bunch of leftists who are trying to do the exact same thing. They think that's normal. To them, that's the function of public schools. In fact, they see their primary goal and their primary responsibility as members of the Board of Education to focus exclusively on this subject matter, rather than actually educating the kids on things like math and science and reading and writing, those things. So, if that weren't enough, Twitter censors the word groomer after left-wing pressure comes against Twitter. So Twitter began censoring the word groomer after left-wing media watchdog group Media Matters for America pressured the site to crack down on the term, which they claim is anti-LGBT. So let's get this straight. If you say that someone who's bringing in drag queens into K-12 education, if you say they're groomers because they're doing this, that's somehow anti-LGBT. No, folks. Remember, the drag queens are adults and they're going in to schools and talking about and sexualizing in front of minors. Obviously, just look at them. We have this picture, if Chris can show this to bring it up. Twitter censors groomer term after left-wing pressure campaign, and you have these children who are 4, 5, 6, sitting on these male laps that are drag queens, that it's so disgusting. And of course, the kids look very confused and very concerned, as they should be. It's like, well, he doesn't look like Santa Claus. So Twitter is basically saying that calling these individuals groomers should be banned because it's anti-LGBT. Well, how is that anti-LGBT? Just look at the picture as Chris put it up. So commentator James Lindsay was locked out of his Twitter account Thursday for calling a Media Matters employee a groomer, according to screenshots Lindsay shared with the Daily Caller News Foundation. He had to delete his tweet and wait an additional 12 hours to regain full access to his account. So, ladies and gentlemen, as a result of this lawsuit that is occurring between Twitter and Elon Musk, Twitter is back to its old ways. Its old ways of censoring anything and everything that it chooses to do. And of course, which means that Twitter, of course, is back to the old Twitter. There's no free speech. It's basically a left-wing outlet, as most of the tech outlets are, because Elon Musk isn't in charge. The term groomer describes adults who form inappropriate friendships with children in order to prime them for sexual abuse, and it has been used by some commentators to refer to those who expose young children to sexual content through drag shows and lessons on gender identity and sexuality. Well, obviously, the term groomer clearly doesn't just apply to the former, where adults are forming inappropriate friendships with children in order to prime them for sexual abuse. The term groomer clearly is also appropriate and applies to those individuals who choose to expose young children to sexual content through drag shows and lessons on gender identity and sexuality. Like pre-K to 5th grade, pre-K to 8th grade. Why would you do that? What would be your objective? To expose these young children and to put them in harm's way and have them sitting on these individuals' laps, which is what they're doing in that picture. What would possibly be your objective? And of course, the answer is simple. It's grooming. Democrats are groomers. Lindsay told DCNF he uses the term to refer to both sexually predatory grooming and ideological grooming into what he called the queer Marxist ideology. Quote, I call people who engage in either of these grooming behaviors groomers because it's wrong to do and because that's what they're doing. They're just grooming, he said. Okay, groomer, Lindsay said in the offending tweet. He was responding Ari Drennan, the LGBTQ program director at Media Matters, who had criticized a DCNF article about the campaign to get groomer censored on Twitter. Twitter told Lindsay his tweet violated its rules against hateful conduct. Also, there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Twitter says it's hateful to call someone who has a child on their lap and it's not their child, and the individual's dressed up in drag, which is drag in a very sexualized manner. The individual, the child is sitting on that individual's lap, and by calling that person a groomer, Twitter says that's hateful speech. So this is where we're going, right? According to a screenshot that he'd shared with DCNF. So here's what it looks like. It says here, you submitted a report for abusive behavior, says Twitter. It's just amazing. It's amazing. Quote, accusing people of harming children with no basis is extremely dangerous, Drennan wrote Thursday. Oh, so the child sits on a groomer's lap. And because the groomer didn't inappropriately touch the child, even though the child is on the groomer's lap, nothing inappropriate happened. Really? I mean, jeez. 3 weeks again, Lindsay directed this little groomer bit at a library holding a drag queen story hour. Proud Boy showed up 3 days later with signs about groomers and a rifle. So, folks, look, this is no longer something that is an exception, okay? It's not a rarity anymore. We have the Democrat Party trying to use nonprofit organizations, which are often funded by the federal government, which means by your tax dollars, through grants that are indirectly given by your tax dollars to these non-profit organizations who then provide grants to public schools. So you follow the money, you're actually paying for this, for groomer ideology to be introduced in pre-K to 12. And so this is no longer isolated in the United States of America. The Democrats think this is where we should be headed. They think that children should absolutely, positively be sexualized, which is just ridiculous. So we also have, to add to this segment, a trans robbery. So this shows you kind of a sign of the times, except that, well, let's read this. So in the Western Journal, pics showing a bank robbing suspect's discreet disguise fooled everyone. Now police can't find him. So robbers usually conceal their faces while performing crimes so that you can't obviously identify them. One man decided to take this to another level by dressing as an old woman as he allegedly robbed a bank Monday in McDonough, Georgia, according to the McDonough Police Department. The cameras in the bank captured the whole incident taking place. The police department has since released a Be on the Lookout public and media release featuring the man in his disguise. The man was wearing a floral pink dress, white sneakers, orange latex gloves, and a white wig. It looks like a black guy who's wearing this white wig, floral pink dress, and these gloves. He also sported a black face mask or neck gaiter and carried a pink bag. So in other words, he had a coronavirus mask on, which, of course, if you're in a bank, you probably wouldn't necessarily these days see that as unusual. In any other part of American history, anyone that would come in with a mask, you would immediately push the alarm button, but not now. And in any other period of time, if you saw a dude walking in that's dressed as a woman, you might also push the alarm button, especially if they're wearing a mask. I mean, those two combined, you're probably thinking something is not going to happen, but this is modern America where dudes can dress up this way. This particular individual clearly looks to me like it's just a complete hoax, and he's literally making fun of the whole idea and making a parody of being trans, because I'm pretty sure he's not trans. He's just dressed up this way. And of course, these days, you can't say anything when the individual walks in. You're thinking it, but the individual walks in and basically says, "Give me all of your money." He also sported a black face mask, a neck gaiter, and carried a pink bag. McDonough police said the man walked into Chase Bank, presented a note demanding money, and then told the teller he had a gun. After grabbing the money, he left the bank, fleeing in a newer model small white SUV with no tag displayed, the police said. The car may have been a Lexus, the police department said. At this time, officers have not been able to identify a license plate number or the amount of money he stole. Fox 5 Atlanta reported. The suspect has been described as a black male, 6 feet tall, slender, the police said. Georgia police are still on the lookout for the suspect, and the investigation is still underway. I'm pretty sure, by the way, the suspect is no longer dressed in the dress and the old lady wig. For instance, in 2014, a man dressed as an elderly woman entered a bank in North Carolina and passed a note to the teller demanding money. And again in 2016, a mail robber dressed as a female during a robbery in Cleveland did the same. Georgia police have asked for help from the public in identifying the police that allegedly committed the bank robbery. So this could be a new trend, right? We have Democrats as groomers, and they're teaching kids from pre-K to 12 to be trans and who knows what. And now, of course, we have people who are taking them up on it and robbing banks as faux trans, right? These are not dudes who really are, think that they're women. They're just dressing up as women because it's a great getaway costume, because you have what appears to be initially, until closer examination, of course, what appears to be initially a woman, an old woman. You're like, oh, she's so cute. And she comes in and you're like, whoa. And then the old woman that you thought was cute, upon closer examination, is actually a dude, passes you a note that says, "Give me all of your money." So Democrats are groomers. It's really that simple. And they're creating this incredibly messed up society that is clearly harming our children. So next up, podcast listeners, a stabbing attempt occurs in New York on Congressman Lee Zeldin. By the way, Lee Zeldin is the guy who's running for governor of the state of New York. So he's at an event. He's outside. He's speaking. We have this clip of the individual, and Lee Zeldin's talking, in front of everybody. He's got this audience. It's outside. It's summertime. You would expect people to be campaigning outside. It looks like a bunch of supporters that are outside. And next thing you know, this guy just randomly comes on stage with a knife and just basically tries to, what appears to be in slow motion, stab him. We have the clip, and here it is.
People are leaving the state because they look at Florida, Texas, Tennessee, and the Carolinas, and their money's going further there. They're feeling safer there. They're living life freer in these other states. You're still here. And this is our last stand for New York. And there's only one option.
So you hear the guy in the background screaming. It's like, ah, ah! And this is the guy that is the dude with the knife that was subdued. But initially he approaches the stage. He's really within inches of Lee Zeldin, who's a congressman, United States congressman, but running for governor of New York. And the dude goes, you're done with a gun, with a knife, I should say. And I think the lieutenant governor under Lee Zeldin actually had his hand slashed pretty badly. He's okay. And the man was subdued by individuals who are part of the campaign. But you see all the people in the audience and they're watching this and they're just going, is this really happening? Is this like, it's like a slow motion kind of thing when you watch and you say, is this really happening? Is there really somebody? And why? Because an individual is expressing their free speech. You're triggered by the free speech of an individual. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, here is the thing. Lee Zeldin, who's running for governor of New York, one part of his platform is he wants to keep the bad guys in jail. Okay? Now hear me out on this. Lee Zeldin, who was almost stabbed by a bad guy, wants to keep the bad guys in jail to make New York safer, among other things. Well, the man who allegedly tried to stab Lee Zeldin has already been let out of jail. He's already out. So the Daily Caller, the alleged attacker of New York Republican representative and gubernatorial candidate Lee Zeldin, has been released from jail just hours after allegedly attempting to stab the politician with a sharp object, authorities announced early Friday. David Jakubinas allegedly climbed on stage, well, it wasn't alleged, by the way, it's right there on video, and attempted to stab Zeldin, saying, "You're done," during a campaign stop in Parenton, New York, which is Monroe County. Sheriff's Office, they announced in a press release. Jakubinas, the bad guy, was arrested and charged with second-degree attempted assault, then released from jail on his own recognizance, the Sheriff's Office said. So, look, if you go at someone with a knife and you're attempting to kill them, okay, or at the very least injure them badly, why are you allowed out of jail like the same day? I mean, shouldn't you be in jail for quite some time? I know that he hasn't been convicted, ladies and gentlemen, but shouldn't he be in jail for like maybe 30 days until things are worked out and they do enough research on him to find out that he's no longer a threat to society, at least until such time as he comes back for trial and then hopefully does serve time? Because what is the teaching moment? There is no teaching moment. The teaching moment is it's okay to assassinate people. It's okay to murder people. And so you got Zeldin, the congressman running for governor of New York, who's basically saying crime is out of control in the state of New York and New York City. And then he has an attack on his life, and the guy that attacks him is already out on bail. Unbelievable. And by the way, I'm not really sure if he is technically out on bail because I wasn't sure if New York actually got rid of bail. Maybe they got rid of bail for nonviolent crimes, but still have bail. But I'm not actually sure, to be honest with you. Kind of misses the point, though. The bad guy's out, okay? Well, if the bad guy, failed the first time, why wouldn't he try again? Of course he would. The bad guy would clearly try it again. And then, more crime, but no punishment. A victim turns the tables on would-be robber when he pulls out a gun and neutralizes the threat. And I believe this happened in Georgia. Well, we actually have a clip of the individual who saved the day. This is the good guy, the good Samaritan, who happened to be at like a gas station / convenience store at the right time and also legally had concealed carry. We have that clip, and this is the individual, and here it is.
Taking somebody's life is not an everyday thing. Neither is saving somebody's life.
Thoughts that now consume one St. Louis man's mind who not only witnessed an armed robbery Saturday morning at a St. Charles Quick Trip, but also stepped in to stop it.
He grabbed a backpack and ran inside, looking for, the clerk. I saw him grab her and drag her to the front, to the counter. Something wasn't right when I saw that, so me being a concealed carry, I had my gun on me, and I just waited.
The customer saw it all unfold from his car parked in front of the QT on First Capitol Drive.
But I walked up to the door, and I saw him wielding a knife to her throat. She was emptying out the cash register, and I took a step in, peeked my head in, and asked if everything was okay. I couldn't see his face, but he was saying yes. But I could see her face, and she was saying no. She was scared.
Police named the robbery suspect as 26-year-old Lance Bush from St. Louis City.
I pulled my gun up, and I asked him, "Are you sure everything is okay?" And that's when the suspect said, "No, it's not okay, but I got something for you." He grabbed his bag, ran from around the counter, and started running towards me, and that's when I fired shots.
He recalls shooting 4 times before Bush.
Yeah, so you have that incident. And then we also have another one in the Daily Wire. What we know about the heroic 22-year-old man who stopped a mass shooting in Indiana. A 22-year-old man with a gun stopped a mass shooting at an Indiana mall on Sunday, saving countless lives, according to authorities. So here's another example of the good guy with a gun who's actually stopping and fatally shooting the person who wants to create, mass violence and death at a shopping mall. The man who fatally shot the active shooter has been identified as Elijah Dickinson. Here's what we know about the young man in the shooting. Dickon was at the mall with his girlfriend when the shooter opened fire on the unsuspecting shoppers at the mall in Greenwood, about 15 miles south of Indianapolis. It was initially reported that within 2 minutes of the first shot, Dickon used his 9mm Glock handgun to fire off at least 10 rounds and kill the shooter. The news reports suggest Dickon started firing after only 15 seconds of the attacker's first shot. I mean, talk about thinking quickly. Quote, "I will say his actions were nothing short of heroic," Greenwood Police Chief Jim Eisen said of Dickon. Greenwood Park Mall surveillance footage captured nearly the entire incident, he noted. Dickon engaged the gunman from quite a distance with a handgun, was very proficient in that, very tactically sound, and as he moved to close in on the suspect, he was also motioning for people to exit behind him. Eisen explained. I mean, talk about a guy that knows what he's doing. The gun was actually legal. The gun that Dickon had was his own Glock, and he legally owned it. He did not have a permit, it says here, according to Newsweek, but per Indiana constitutional carry law, effective July 1, he didn't need one because he has a right, according to the Second Amendment, to carry. Indiana attorney Guy Relford, representing Dickon, said his client followed the law during the incident. He checks all the boxes as perfectly as possibly could. The Greenwood Park Mall has a no-gun policy, IndyStar noted, but Relford said this creates no legal challenges for his client. It certainly has no effect whatsoever on his ability to use force to defend himself or to defend the other people in the mall, Relford said. IndyStar reported that. Basically, if Dickon carried the gun into the mall and was asked to leave for doing so, but he did not leave, he could be charged with trespassing, the attorney said. So this is interesting stuff, right? Because one of the things that we're seeing across America now is crime has gotten so bad, more and more people are carrying their own gun and doing so legally, okay, the good guys with the gun, and they are taking the law into their own hands. That is to say, you have so many bad guys on the street because of the cancel the police movement that the good guys are forced to take the law in their own hands and shoot and take out the bad guy with the gun. In other words, shooting and killing the bad guy. And what's interesting now is during the Trump administration, we would have BLM all over all this stuff. Oh, you shot a black guy or you shot a guy. That's really wrong. I mean, BLM, it's unfair. We don't have equity and so forth. BLM is nowhere to be seen now. You want to know why? Because they've lost all credibility because the American people are absolutely tired of the unsafe streets and the idea that they go to places that are just the normal places you would go. that you would think that you were safe, like restaurants, like pumping gas and putting gas in your car, like going to the restaurant or the mall. I mean, any of these places, and suddenly you're not safe. You're not safe anywhere. And thank God the Supreme Court had the ruling where you have the right to bear arms. I mean, we still have states, the blue states, that are doing everything they can to stop you from exercising your constitutional rights. But if there were ever a time when we need to exercise our constitutional rights to have our own arms and to carry, and our Second Amendment rights, just generally speaking, would be now, because you would want to protect yourself, because who knows when you're going to need to do so, depending on where you live. And here's the thing. The left, the Democrats, the groomers, they're the ones who have put the rest of us in this particular predicament. And rather than incarcerating the bad guys, which they've chosen not to do, instead, what they've actually done is they're signing the death warrant for the bad guys. Because now that more and more good guys have guns, we're going to find out they're going to be more and more dead guys that are the bad guys when they go out, because they're going to be forced to face a person who is carrying. And this is what we're seeing across America. And I guess we have to ask ourselves the question, is this better? I mean, and I want to make clear what I'm saying about this. I am a staunch Second Amendment guy. I want people to have the right to carry. But what I'm saying is it better that we have a society that is less safe because the left has chosen to cancel the police? And the answer is no. They should fully fund the police so that these individuals can be incarcerated once they commit a crime. And at the same time, we should underscore and demonstrate, certainly as conservatives, why the Second Amendment is so important. Because here's a period in American history when we see that the only way that you can potentially protect yourself in so many of these communities is to have your own weapon and to have it on your own person, because of the possibility and the increasing possibility that you are going to be attacked. So I just wanted to bring this out there about the fact that we started out with Lee Zeldin. He gets attacked. The guy gets out of jail the same day, and he could have killed a gubernatorial candidate. And then we see these other incidences where people of all different ages, and recently a man who's as young as 22 years old, basically kills a shooter who was going to commit mass murder in an Indiana shopping center. And if we can ever underscore the importance of the Second Amendment, here it is. The left has lost its mind because it's tried to cancel the police. BLM is nowhere to be found because canceling the police has become a disaster in the blue cities, as well as the rest of America. And we have the left, who, of course, is they're too focused on grooming children, because they cancel the police, they groom children. Well, that's probably another reason why they want to cancel the police, because then the police they don't have the time to arrest the people who are trying to groom children. But I digress. That is what happens. And I'm just saying it's really important that we maintain and that we continue to fight as conservatives to protect our Second Amendment rights, because we see in the United States of America how the Second Amendment is working. It is working, okay? And it's so important that it continues to work and that we continue to have these rights. Next up, podcast listeners, we have the daily Biden dumpster fire. Congressman Jake Auchincloss, hard to say, Auchincloss, he is a congressman, and Joe Biden completely messes up his name. Granted, it's an easy name to mess up, but that's really not even the point, because Joe Biden calls him a she, and we have the clip. Here it is.
Well, hello, Massachusetts. It's an honor to be with you, outstanding members of Congress today. Senator Ed Markey. Ed, there you go. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Congressman Auchincloss, where is she? There you go, Jake. Bill Keating, Congressman, and your great former members, and one of my dearest friends, John Kerry, is doing a great job leading our international special presidential envoy on climate, traveling the world and talking with an awful lot of people. He's talking into moving more than they've been doing.
So, folks, they kept turning the mic down. Chris was putting this out, our millennial. They kept turning the mic down because Biden kept making more and more mistakes. He called Auchincloth sauce, and then Jake, of course, is a guy, Congressman Jake, it's a dude, and he doesn't have a pronoun of she. And of course, Biden says Auchincloth sauce and and then he keeps making more and more mistakes. So his handlers are turning down the mic so you can't hear what he's saying. Let's play this again. We have the clip again. Here it is.
Well, hello, Massachusetts. It's an honor to be with you, outstanding members of Congress today. Senator Ed Markey. Ed, there you go. Senator Elizabeth Warren. Congressman Auchincloth sauce. Where is she? There you go, Jake. Bill Keating, Congressman. And your great former members, and one of my dearest friends, John Kerry, is doing a great job leading our international special presidential envoy on climate, traveling the world and talking with an awful lot of people. He's talking into moving more than they've been doing.
So Chris, our millennial, is actually a sound expert, and he's watching very closely. So Biden doesn't get farther away from the mic. It's literally the handlers, the Biden handlers, and they're turning the mic down more and more because he keeps making these mistakes. Congressman Jake Auchincloth sauce. Jake. Hey, Jake, yeah, she. So obviously, he doesn't know where he is. He doesn't know what he's saying. He doesn't read anything before he shows up because, look, folks, we all know if you're going to speak in front of people, the first thing you want to do is look at what it is that you're supposed to be reading and read it to make sure, number one, you pronounce the words correctly, and number two, so that you have some familiarity of what it is that you're reading and who you're speaking to. It looks to me like Biden never does that, and that he just shows up and he reads it, and like whatever happens, happens, and then the sound people are like, turn down, no, more. It's like listening to Grandpa from The Simpsons. I mean, absolutely. So that is the daily Biden dumpster fire. And that's it for Mark and the Millennials. Thank you for joining Mark and the Millennials. This is Mark Fisher. Thank you to our producer, Christopher Hopkins. Check us out on iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Getter, Truth Social, Rumble, and our website. See you next time.